30 Minutes with Ron. Hello, my name is Ron Gagliardi. I'm the host of 30 Minutes with Ron. Welcome to another edition. I would like to introduce the guests for tonight, Agnes Manook and Diane Calabro. Welcome.
Hi, Ron.
Thanks,
We're
Ron.
back.
We are.
Yes. Our audience may have seen our first edition of the show about John F. Kensett, and there was so much that we didn't talk about that we decided we have to have you back. The one thing that I remember that did not get mentioned was something about a volcano and how that's going to come into play during the Kensett celebrations. Are you talking about the volcano, or are you talking about the volcano?
Agnes will start.
We'll both
We'll
talk.
talk together.
Okay, ping pong volcano talk. All right, go ahead.
Diane, do you want to start talking about the event that will take place at
All
the
right.
Cheshire Historical Society?
We are planning to have in March 2016, on March 28th, our speaker evening for that night will be a meteorologist that will talk about the volcano activity in 1815. Now, this was a volcano, the Tambora volcano, and it was in
April.
no, where though?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
At the time, it was the Dutch East Indies. Today,
All right.
it would be considered Indonesia.
And this was a huge event, so huge that the smoke, flumes, fire changed the actual weather all the way out here in the New England area. Mm-hmm. It created, for the year that Kensett was born, it created a year without summer. And it was a year of hardships for a group that really relies on agricultural issues. So farming was impacted, there were food shortages. It was a really, really tough time, even in Connecticut, from a volcano all the way around the other side of the world. Temperatures were very, very low. There was less sunlight. Obviously, crops weren't growing. So we want to have someone come in and talk about that on March 28th, Monday night in 2016. So that will be one of the events at the Cheshire Historical Society.
Will there be mini volcanoes happening throughout the town? I know that that's one of the projects that schools often do, one of the science projects with baking soda or something. And my son, until like recently, had his mini volcano from Highland School in our closet. It never really exploded in our house, fortunately, and we just got rid of it. And he's 30, so they tend to stay around.
They stay around. Yes, the Cheshire Public Library was planning on having a volcano. They have a program during the summer, a reading program called Full Steam Ahead. And I believe one of the last activities that they will be having is a volcano, like probably something like what your son made 30 years ago.
Excellent. It's a wonderful thing to watch. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we got the volcano situation out of the way. Now there are some things that are going to be happening that actually have plans and dates. And I think you are the person, Diane, who's going to share with us some of the plans, some of the events, and some of the dates.
All right. So what we have in place right now is the Ives Farm Day at the Farm. This is a land trust event, and the event is Saturday. I'm sorry, I have to check my notes. Saturday, September 19th from 10 to 4 on Cheshire Street at the Ives Farm. We'll be there. The society will be there. There will be plein air events on the premises, and we will also be talking a little bit about our next event, where there'll be more involvement with the John Frederick Kensett project. But at the Ives Farm Day at the Farm, there will be plein air, which isn't just air that's plain. No. I have to pass this over to Agnes because she can take it from there.
Well, this again is perfect for a Kensett celebration because, as you know, Ron, during the summer and fall months, Kensett, along with his other artist friends, would go around the country, travel to different destinations, and paint
Plein air.
plein air
Yes.
outside.
Right.
That was a tradition that Thomas Cole had started, and he told his followers that it's the only way to go. If you're going to be painting landscapes, you should be out there
with nature.
With nature.
Yes.
And so this will be a perfect opportunity for Cheshire artists and artists from around Connecticut to experience painting outside.
Yes,
yes, bring your easel,
yes.
Bring your paints, paintbrushes, paper, watercolors, oils, whatever medium you use, and it's the perfect opportunity. So we invite everybody to come to that day and enjoy, and also to watch other artists painting and see
Peek
what
over
they're
their shoulder.
doing. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now we should add at this point that the word plain is a French word, and it's spelled P-L-E-I-N, but the air is spelled A-I-R. I thought there was an E on the end, but Agnes told me no, there's no E on the end. So it's plein air. If you pronounce it in French, it's probably plein air, but you know, who would pronounce it in French? All right, so next event, what's up?
Next event is a month later, and that's at Hillside Cemetery, and that's our Spirits Alive tour. I can't give a lot of that away. The script writers would probably have my head, but one of the things, you know, spoiler alert, is that we will have a person, a historic person, a Cheshire person, that lived in the house that John Frederick Kensett was born in and grew up in. And he'll be telling a lot of stories about what it was like to live in a house that had artists in it. And the Spirits Alive Cemetery Tour has some things that are scary. I can't say a word about what they are. Lips are sealed. But we can. I can tell you that there will be something about John Frederick Kensett at that cemetery tour, and we're really excited about that. That's actually 3 nights, October 16, 17, 18, the Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights. Tours are about 40 minutes. They start at 5:30 and go till about 9 o'clock on all 3 nights. Reservations are needed. People will have to call the Historical Society or check our website. But we're excited. This is our 2nd year for Spirits Alive. We were mobbed last year without Kensett. So this year, knowing that Kensett is involved, I would imagine we'll have lines all the way out to Town Hall. So we'll see what happens for that.
Okay. Now we should add that this person who lived in the Kensett house is not currently that person. It's because he would be looking a little ashen by now. It's an actor portraying this person. Yes.
Correct.
We have to make sure that the public realizes this.
And he was a character in his own right. So you'll hear his story, and then you'll hear a story about Kensett as well. You'll get both.
And speaking of characters in their own right, last year somebody had the idea to invite the town crier, the honorary town crier, to be there to ring people in. And that happens to be me. And if you want to see one of the few guys in town who owns a pair of white tights, I'll be there ringing a bell in my white tights and my town crier knickers and my vest and tri-cornered hat. So that's worth the price of admission itself. Not really, no.
It was fun.
I had fun.
Yeah, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you want to hear our next event?
Maybe. Okay.
All right. The next event is December 20th, and that's our Christmas party at the Cheshire Historical Society. This is an open house event. It's open to the entire community. The whole house will be decorated by the Suburban Garden Club, and I've brought some examples of how this decoration will look. What we'll have at the Society are ornaments. Each ornament will be a Kensett painting, and all of the trees in the house, and there are numerous trees that will be up for decoration, will have all of these ornaments with the different Kensett portraits on them.
Maybe I can hold it up without spilling the water.
You could try.
When Agnes brought it out, I said, "Oh, take a bow."
So that's what we're going for, and it should be bright, it should be colorful. You'll get to see a really good, small examples of what Kensett did for all his many pieces. Think you can get that?
I think we got it down now.
Okay, good.
You can spruce the place up, or pine the place up, whatever.
And we'll also have our dining room set up as if Kensett is about to drop in for a party. So it'll be set up as an artist soiree. Our dining room is really pretty. We have some beautiful handmade linens. We have wonderful pieces of porcelain. And having this set up as well with the cigar smoking debonair Kensett as well, I think will be just a wonderful party experience for people to come in and see. It's a free event. It's going to go from 1 o'clock until 5 o'clock. That's at the Cheshire Historical Society, 43 Church Drive. Everyone is welcome. Just come visit, even if it's for 5 minutes, come in the house and see what we're going to be having to show people for our Kensett celebration.
Excellent. And do we have another event to talk about?
I think what we have next comes out to the actual birthday party.
The spectacular birthday party.
The spectacular birthday party.
All right. Do you know about the spectacular birthday party, Agnes?
A little bit. It's going to be held at Arts Place in Cheshire, March 20th, which is a Sunday. I don't have the exact times yet for you. We still have a little time before. But there will be special commemorative plates that I believe were available yesterday.
At Bavano Fest.
At Bavano Fest.
Designed by Jan Lesnikowski.
That's correct.
He was there?
Yes.
Plates were there?
Plates were there.
If I had thought, I would have brought one. Problems.
But you will be able to see the plates, I'm sure, in another episode maybe, or around town. I'm sure he's going to be making many of them.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll be able to have cake served on one of those plates that he's making.
All right. And there will be the special drink that we talked about last time that maybe we want to mention?
Yes, we have the Cheshire Pedia group is hard at work designing a special Kensett cocktail. They should be refining that recipe pretty much as we speak. That recipe, both with non-alcoholic and alcoholic version, will be available at the Christmas party and also at the birthday party. And we hope at various restaurants and locations at Cheshire through the year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go over to Agnes again. When we were talking earlier before we got on set, there's some things about Kensett that I never knew, and that you know because you are the par excellence researcher about Kensett. Tell us about his life. He was single.
Yes.
And he had a quote about his singlehood.
Yes, he did mention that he was married to his art.
Okay.
And I think he was. He spent a lot of time. It's known that he was a very early riser, and he would spend most of his mornings painting. There's a lot of letters from his sisters that mention when he was in town. They never saw him because he would be either out in the mornings painting, or he in the afternoon spending time with his friends, like Diane mentioned about the cigars, and he liked to go out for dinner with his friends. Delmonico's was a very popular restaurant at that time, and that was a favorite haunt of his and his artist friends. He also, I know a couple letters, his sister mentioned that he would go out in the morning if he was out someplace doing plein air painting. He would go out, he would be out in the woods, and from letters that he wrote to his sister, he would mention all the different wild animals that he would encounter, sitting very quietly. I'm sure that he wasn't making too much noise. He would see all kinds of wild animals. He went to a lot of places that were very far out of the way. I've actually taken the walks up the hills that he went, and I can testify that they are very out of the way and very difficult to get to even today, and that he would leave some of his materials in place so that the next day he wouldn't have to lug everything, because as you know, he would have an umbrella, he would have a heavy wooden easel, he would have a box filled with paints, paper, canvases. It's pretty heavy.
A lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff, yes. So it makes sense that he would leave some of the things probably secure somewhere.
And now you mentioned his sisters, and I don't think we got too much into his family, brothers and sisters. So explain to us exactly how big his family was.
Oh, it was quite a large family. He was the second. His brother Thomas was born in 1814, and he was the older brother was the one who took over the canning business his father's canning business when his father died in 1829. John Frederick Kensett, who was known as Jack to family and friends, was born in 1816, and he, as you know, became an artist. He had two sisters, Elizabeth and Sarah. One of the sisters married an associate who was in the canning business with her brother Thomas, and the younger sister, Sarah, married an artist. And she lived in Ithaca, so Kensett spent a lot of time in Ithaca, visiting there.
Now, when you mentioned Jack, that reminds me of something else that you told me that I didn't know. There's another JFK, and who's called Jack,
Yes.
and there's a connection to our JFK.
There is.
Could you explain that to us?
Yes, we were talking because we're very lucky to have the painting.
Yeah, the Cheshire Historical Society has the little Kensett. This is really little. It's about 6+ inches by 9+ inches. It's really small. And as we understand it, that was a study for a larger Niagara Falls piece. The subject is Niagara Falls. That piece is now at the White House. It was part of the John F. Kennedy administration. That's when it arrived at the White House. So there is that connection between the two JFKs.
And Mrs. Kennedy purchased it. Yes. Well, just a little aside, Cheshire has some amazing connections to John F. Kennedy as well. When he was at Choate, he and his family used to eat at the Waverly Inn. So that's something that a lot of people don't know.
No,
and something that even his presidential library doesn't know. He used to sneak into Cheshire during the time that he was president, and he met with a Cheshire resident who was an expert on the mob somehow, Dr. Albert Burke. And Dr. Albert Burke had a residence on Route 42, and in the woods he had this little trailer, and John F. Kennedy would meet with him there. And I found this hard to believe. It was told to me by Albert Burke's daughter. And I talked to a policeman who was on the force at the time, and he said they used to cut off both ends. They used to block off both ends of Route 42 when Kennedy was here. And when I called up his library to check this out, they said, we've never heard that. Wow. So there's a little aside for you folks who are viewers of this show. Okay, do we have another event to talk about?
We do.
Yes.
We have year to year, the Cheshire Historical Society participates in Connecticut Open House Day. Last year we did Colonial Days. It was a huge success, which was wonderful. This year on June 11th, Saturday, June 11th, 2016, I should say, we'll be doing a Kensett Day at the Cheshire Historical Society, where we'll focus on all types of art and handicrafts, to really bring out the creative spirit inside of people that might come to the society to visit that day. This is all free. It will go through the day from 10 o'clock in the morning to about 4 in the afternoon. One of the things we've been thinking about is silhouettes. We have a number of wonderful silhouettes in our toy room, of children, of animals, of play toys, things like that. And we'd really like people to kind of get in the spirit of those silhouettes and try it themselves. So that's in the far future. You know, it's still a year away, so it's out there on my radar. But we were really excited about this idea of having Kensett Day for our Connecticut Open House Day next year.
Very good. Now, a little bit about the French connection there. The word silhouette is a French word. It comes from the name of a tax collector in, I believe, Paris, but it was part of someplace in France. His name was Etienne de Silhouette. And apparently, he was a very cheap person. In those times, they didn't have photography, and if you wanted to get a family portrait done, you'd have to pay a lot of money for an artist to come and paint the portrait. Or you could get someone to do a cutout of your outline, your profile. And they became known as silhouettes because of Etienne de Silhouette's reputation as a cheap person. Where are you going to get that kind of information?
Only on your show.
Only on this show.
Only on your show.
Now, let's see. Last time we talked about Kensett having been a founder of the Metropolitan Museum. We talked earlier, offset, that there was a committee and that he was part of the committee. And there was something that they had founded this on. There was some event that happened around the country. We need to know about that.
Well, it was the sanitary fairs that took place during the 1860s, during the Civil War. They were held in multiple cities on different dates. The local communities came together to organize these fairs in order to raise money for Union soldiers. And it just happened that in New York City, Kensett happened to be one of the organizers of the art department. There were different departments showcasing different things, handicrafts and fine arts. And after the fair, it was such a success. The paintings were beautiful. People were thrilled. A lot of them sold. And it was thought that it would be a great idea if these same people came together again, but did something a little more permanent. And that's how the Metropolitan was started. They got together again. A lot of the artists from the community, some of the business community as well, because they needed not only paintings and art, but they also needed money in order to put up a building. And there were actually several buildings before the one that we know of today that held the collection, and the collection kept growing, so the buildings had to keep growing, and it is what it is today.
Fantastic. A Cheshire resident. Such a great place. I had a confusion about Mr. Kensett. I thought that he had various studios and that at some point he bought the land on Contentment Isle and that became his residence and studio. But it turns out I am full of baloney. Agnes was able to correct me, very nicely of course, and we would like to find out what's this studio situation.
Well, he did have several studios, you are correct. When he came back from Europe in 1847, there was, the first studio was called Waverly House, and it was in the location of where the NYU is currently. It was always known a little enclave for artists. And then he had successive studios along Broadway. And his last studio was in a YMCA building. And that was built as a YMCA building, but the entire top floor was dedicated for artist studios. And they had a library, they had a meeting room. Every Saturday, each of the studios was open to the public, so people could come and take a look at what the artist was working on currently, or some artwork that was already completed, and they could purchase it at that time or come back the next Saturday. They were always open on Saturdays. And it was built across the street from the National Academy of Design, which was very convenient for the artists, yes. So, yes, that was his last studio. And Contentment Island was more of a summer house. He did have a studio there as well, but it was just for basically for the summer or for weekends to go and paint.
And are there any more events that we should share, or should we go down to the auction of Kensett art?
There might be another event next August.
You mean Bavano Fest?
There might be a Kensett presence at Bavano Fest.
Okay, for complete clarification here, I ran this thing called Bavano Fest at Bavano in Cheshire. And it's a festival for arts and music. And we had Bavano Fest 1 last year. Bavano Fest 2 was just this past weekend, August 8th and 9th. And we're hoping to have a Bavano Fest 3. And I've been prevailed upon that something Kensettian should be there. So you heard it first here. All right. Let's get to the auction. There was an auction.
There was an auction.
How come? What happened?
Yes. Following Kensett's very sad death, there was an auction of his work. It was actually very well attended, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the painting that's at the Historical Society was actually purchased up there at that.
I can check on that.
At that auction. I have a feeling
that would be way cool.
There were, if I remember correctly, it was around 500 of the paintings that were in his studio at the time of his death. And so other paintings were already in collections. That same year, his brother Thomas, the one we spoke about earlier, he had about 70 paintings that were in the Contentment Island that he had done, painted the last summer. And those ended up at the Metropolitan, thanks to his brother. And there was another auction about a year or two later when his very good friend, the executor of his will, Robert Oliphant, he had a large collection of Kensett's paintings and other painters from that period, mostly landscape. When he died, there was another auction, and so some more of Kensett's paintings were available at that time as well.
I assume they went for fairly good prices?
Some of them did. It depended on the painting itself. The paintings ranged, if I remember correctly, from several $100s to several $1,000s. So yes, at that time, today's prices, they sound very cheap,
Right.
but at the time, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 was quite a sum.
Yeah, today they're in the millions.
Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
I remember a story that
to
was
buy
in the
one of
news
his.
a couple of years ago. There was a town hall in a community like Canton or someplace in that part of the state, and they had a Kensett sitting someplace on the wall or in a closet or something, and they found out, oh my goodness, this is a Kensett, and so they brought it out.
Oh, yes, actually, that was a Kensett of one of the Niagara Falls pictures. He has about 5 of them. He had painted about 5 of them, and one of those is the one you mentioned, and it is at the Wadsworth Atheneum.
So
now,
I
yes.
guess somebody's town hall made a sale and maybe offset some of the taxes that year.
I don't
We don't know. It could have been a donation, but somehow, I don't know. Well, we're coming to the close of the show. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you might want to get into?
Well, we didn't talk too much about the volcano, how it affected Cheshire particularly, because, it affected most of North America, most of New England, but Cheshire especially, this was in 1816, and there was a large amount of Cheshirites who, unfortunately, because of the volcano and the weather conditions, left, and they migrated west, especially to the Western Reserve, which, as you know, yes, is in Ohio, which was actually Connecticut land up to about 1795, I think. It was sold to the Connecticut Land Trust.
And that's the reason.
Yes, and a lot of them found their way to Ohio.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We're going to be closing now. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you really enjoyed Kensett.